John, let's get right into what the people want to know. So, with the coaching staff returning for year two and there being some consistency, there um, have there been any new wrinkles that have been introduced on offense and or defense?
For the defense, I do think there will be some changes. Coach Chadwell talked about how in 23, Liberty played a lot of man coverage. I think you'll see more zone. Part of that due to personnel. Liberty lost a couple corners in the portal that went to P5 schools, and it's not always so easy to replace some of those positions. So it might be a little bit of some change on that side of the ball, but for the most part, I think it's pretty much going to be a lot, very similar to what Liberty ran in 23.
Um, Talking about injuries, other than quarterback position, what do you think is the biggest drop off from the starters to the backups? And that could be on the offense, defensive side of the ball, where hey, we just can't take any more injuries here before we're really affecting what we do as a team.
Yeah, I mean, I think defensive line is always one of those positions, especially at the G5 level. Is you just don't have a ton of depth at that level, typically most teams. So I think that certainly would be one for Liberty is the defensive line on the defensive side of the ball.
Switching things up a little bit, let's talk a little bit about the defense. So they lose one of their leaders, in the defense and the linebacker core, Tyron Dupree, who was their leading tackler last year. Who is there anyone you see kind of stepping up, kind of taking over that leadership role, and or a linebacker stepping up to kind of take on that middle linebacker role?
Yeah, linebacker's kind of been a position that Liberty's kind of had a lot of question marks the last few years, unable to really recruit much there out of high school or anybody that really, stuck. I mean, they might get a guy in and he's around for a year or two and doesn't really pan out and transfers to a lower level. And that's unfortunately what's happened a lot for Liberty, really, since they moved to the FBS. They've been relying on, 1-year transfers to kind of be a plug gap. And that's going to be the case again this year. Tyron Dupree was a key piece, obviously conference defensive player of the year last year in Conference USA. And like you mentioned, leading tackler and really a leader more than anything. He was a leader on that defense. And I think you're going to see a few names. Liberty was really aggressive in that room in the transfer portal. Taylor Jackson from East Carolina comes in. He'll probably step into that starting Mike spot that, Dupree leaves vacated. You also got Jamar Brown, another transfer from Coastal Carolina. Seems to keep mentioning that school, but of course that's where the coaching staff came from. So what do you expect? But yeah, Jamar Brown's another guy who kind of played that will linebacker spot. He could start. Jerome Jolly is another guy that started, half the year last year at linebacker. And I think he and Brown are kind of jockeying for that starting will spot. You'll see both of them out there. I think then also Joe Carter, whose name was slipping my mind there. Joe Carter is a former walk-on, earned a scholarship last year and kind of took the starting job from Jolly as the season wore on. But I think those four will kind of be your mainstays at linebacker. So Liberty might not have the, Tyron Dupree Conference Defensive Player of the Year at linebacker this year, but I think they'll have more depth. And hopefully, having more depth, they'll be able to kind of offset the loss of a guy like Dupree.
So adding to that, maybe it's one of the guys you mentioned there, but is there a defensive player that stood out this spring that you think could have a breakout season here in 2024?
It's funny. A guy that keeps coming to mind when I think about that, and I kind of chuckle to myself that I'm mentioning this guy as a guy that could have a breakout year, but it's TJ Bush. He was a freshman last year, defensive end. I mean, he was an All-American last year, a freshman All-American. So to say he could be a breakout this year in his second year is kind of like, really? Are we saying that? But he was named most improved at his position this spring. I talked to him during the spring practice period and asked him, TJ, after such a strong freshman year, you're going into your second year with the program. What are you trying to improve upon? He said, he no hesitation. He said, my pass rush. I have to be a better pass rusher. And that was one of the things Liberty really struggled at as a defense last year was the ability to rush the passer. And if TJ is able to take that next step and kind of cause some havoc in opposing teams' backfields, that could be a huge step for this defense. Could really help that defensive backfield that might have a little, few holes, maybe a couple question marks going into the year. But we saw he made one great play. He made several great plays, but one specifically that stands out in the spring game where he kind of pushed his lineman back into the pocket, made the pocket collapse. The quarterback got the pass off, but then, and I saw a photo of the play, and TJ Bush looked like he was 35 plus inches off the ground and got his right paw up and batted it down. And it was just a very athletic play, and something that I think Liberty fans will see more of from him moving into his second year in the program. And this is a guy that, I hate to even say this out loud, but he's probably a guy that Liberty's going to have to really fight hard to keep out of the portal moving forward, just because of his raw athletic ability. And anytime you get a defensive lineman with that type of ability, especially young with multiple years of eligibility left, those power schools are going to come calling for him. But TJ Bush is a guy I look to kind of make a big impact, a kind of a breakout, even if you can call it that. After he really had a good year last year if you look at his stats, but I think there's a lot of room for growth for him as well.